Don McCoy. I'm a business news reporter with the Oklahoman and News OK, and I'm joined today by Stanley Hupfeldt, who's well known around these parts. He's been the CEO at Integris Health for quite a while. He's been the CEO at American Hospitals for nearly 4 decades, very active in the community. In fact, Integris launched the first hospital-sponsored charter school in the nation, which is now called Stanley Hupfeldt Academy. And Mr. Hupfeldt has written a book called Political Malpractice: How the Politicians Made a Mess of Health Reform. And we were going to talk about that today. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Hupfeldt. It's great to see you today. You know, that title of your book is kind of provocative, Political Malpractice. And you believe that we've been poorly served, I guess, by the political rhetoric that has surrounded the whole health reform issue.
It seems to me in the most important domestic issue of our time, we've turned it over to a group that is probably least prepared to do anything intelligent about it. And so, as I say in the preface of the book, the day that the Affordable Care Act was passed, I was so frustrated with both political parties that I got up in the middle of the night and wrote a column that was published in the Oklahoman, and it was sort of a pox on both their houses. And I got such a reaction from it, I said, well, okay, so I wrote a book. Started a book, and 3 months later I'd finished.
Well, and I enjoyed reading the book. It's a slim volume, but there's a lot of stuff packed in there. One of the things that I thought was interesting, you talk about a lot of changes that need to be made, and one of the things that you talk about is Americans' attitudes about their health care. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I interviewed a lot of doctors for this book, and almost universally the physicians told me the pressure that they feel under to do something, in many cases something expensive, when doing nothing would be better. And they told me of the feeling they get, almost palpable feeling from their patients, that if they say, you know, Mrs. Jones, let's just watch this, I don't think we need to do anything right now, sort of people leave their office disappointed. So we're part of the problem. We, in effect, cause our physicians to overtreat. For instance, you know, pharmaceutical companies advertise nightly drugs that only physicians can prescribe. So they're advertising over the head of doctors. And the reason they do that is they know that 90% of the time when a patient asks for a medication by name, rather than taking the time to explain to the patient why it wouldn't be in their best interest, it's just easier to write the script.
And a lot of what you talk about is the whole system is poorly incentivized. I mean, from the insurance providers to the doctors to the hospitals, there's a lot of problems there with incentives.
Well, I use the comment that if we started out 50 years ago and we'd said to ourselves, let's devise a health system that is guaranteed to be high cost, highest cost in the world, we've been amazingly successful. Because all the incentives point us toward a high-cost solution to every problem. The physicians have incentives to do more. Hospitals have incentives to acquire more technology. Insurance companies have the incentive not to pay doctors and hospitals on a timely basis. Our legal profession has the incentive to question everything physicians do. The whole incentive of all the players in the system is toward the highest cost.
And we've poured so much money in this system that you believe that if it was properly reformed, we're already spending enough to take care of everybody.
I think there is, and I try to make this case in the book, there's already enough money in the system that if we're willing to do some difficult things, we can take care of the uninsured, which, by the way, was where we started to begin with, take care of the uninsured and not have to raise taxes.
Well, and you lay out at the end of the book a 14-point plan. And there's some fairly radical stuff in there. Nonprofit insurance companies, big changes in the ways that hospitals cooperate, a lot of different things.
You know, for instance, 1/4 of every dollar that's spent in healthcare goes to collecting a bill. 1/4. So 25% of all cost has nothing to do with care. It has to do with the physical act of collecting a bill. I think we can do better than that. About 20% of healthcare cost is duplication. Everything that gets done for us gets duplicated in some form or fashion, often because our records are not universally available from one provider to another. There are experts that say that about 20 to 30% of everything that's done to us may be unnecessary. So when you begin to add up all these pieces, you can make the intellectual case and the mathematical case that there's about 50% waste in the system, that if we were willing to make some corrections, you actually could put back into patient care and begin to take care of the uninsured.
And one of the things you propose, which to me might be the most difficult one, is a 1-year reasonable discussion about the whole process.
You know, my whole problem with the discussion you hear on nightly news and on the talk shows is the complete lack of intellectual depth. It's all soundbite driven. And my suggestion is we need to sort of take a breath. We need to sit back and we need to force the American public to have a thoughtful debate about issues such as dying, a thoughtful debate about issues such as evidence-based medicine, and listen to the experts, debate it among ourselves. And so yes, I propose a series of high-level discussions in every community across this country where people are actually forced to calmly think about, listen to different kinds of arguments about how we could change the healthcare system.
You know, I assume you deal with a lot of these people and have dealt with a lot of these people regularly in insurance, in hospitals, doctors, lawyers, etc. Have any of them read your book yet?
Yes.
What sort of feedback are you getting?
Well, you know, the book is getting really good traction, and people that have read it. I didn't write it for insiders. I didn't write it for healthcare people. I really wrote it for the average person who listens to the nightly news or listens to the talk shows and really wants to know how the healthcare system works and doesn't necessarily buy off on what they're being told. You know, the talk shows sort of try to tell us what it is we're supposed to think. The politicians try to tell us what it is we're supposed to think. I wrote this so that people could understand how it really works from the inside in very plain and simple language, so they could begin to make their own decisions about how we think we should reform healthcare.
Well, I've read it and I can vouch for that. It is written at that level. Where can people get this book? Is it?
Well, in mid-April, it'll be in the bookstores. It is published by a local publisher, Tate Publishing, here in Mustang, Oklahoma. Actually published it, and you can go on their website. Or you can go on my website, stanhupfeld.com, and has a direct link to the Tate Publishing and to the book itself.
Okay. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming in and talking to us about today. It's a very interesting book.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And we'll have a review of this book appearing in the Oklahoman on Sunday, and I can be pretty sure that it's going to be a fairly positive review. And we'll have more coverage on the whole healthcare issue on the Oklahoman and News OK. Thank you very much.